Have you ever noticed that in today's noisy world, silence almost feels dangerous? We surround ourselves with music, notifications, endless chatter, anything to escape a few minutes of quiet. But here's the shocking truth: silence is not emptiness. It is power. In The Power of Silence by Nicolas Diat and Robert Serra, the authors reveal that silence is where clarity, wisdom, and divine timing are born. It is not weakness, but the hidden engine of strength that shaped saints, thinkers, and leaders throughout history. Imagine if the very peace you've been running away from is actually the secret to success, happiness, and inner freedom. What happens when you stop escaping silence and start listening to it? Let's dive in and find out. We live in a world where silence is often feared. Students keep music running while they study, professionals drown their commute in podcasts, and parents fill family time with background TV. It's as if silence is unbearable, like an empty void we must quickly cover with noise. But this constant flood of sound and distraction has a cost. It robs us of clarity. It keeps us from hearing our own thoughts. It drowns out the wisdom that only appears when the world becomes still. In The Power of Silence by Nicolas Diat and Robert Serra, we are reminded that silence is not about running away from life, it's about stepping into a deeper part of it. Silence is where true discernment begins, where divine timing becomes clear, and where the inner chaos finally settles. If you've ever struggled with overthinking, stress, burnout, or the endless comparison of social media, then this book offers a hidden doorway back to yourself. Silence may not promise quick success, but it builds the foundation for lasting transformation. Think of it as sharpening your mind, purifying your emotions, and aligning your life with the deepest truths. And that is exactly what this journey is about. Welcome to Unique Audiobook. This is the place where you'll find the world's best book summaries, crafted to give you wisdom in minutes. Each summary here reveals a hidden secret that can change your thinking and your life. Whether you're a student overwhelmed by exams, a parent balancing responsibilities, a professional chasing deadlines, or someone searching for peace in relationships, health, or finance, this channel is for you. And today's book, The Power of Silence by Nicolas Diat and Robert Serra, holds something extraordinary. It's not just about peace and quiet, it's about how silence shapes clarity, strengthens faith, and transforms our entire existence. The secret we're about to explore might just be the turning point in your journey. Don't skip this, because silence is not what you think it is. Too often, we treat silence like a gap that must be filled, with endless scrolling, constant notifications, or mindless chatter. But what if silence is the hidden treasure chest of life, waiting to be opened? This book reveals that silence is the birthplace of wisdom, creativity, and true strength. Without silence, leaders lose clarity, relationships lose depth, and our inner peace disappears into the noise. That's why The Power of Silence is not just another book, it's a roadmap for a life that feels whole again. Stay till the end, because the final lesson we'll uncover is the most powerful. It shows why silence isn't weakness, but the greatest force you can ever learn to master. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. Think about Albert Einstein. While the world admired his theories, very few noticed how he worked. Einstein often spent hours walking alone, sometimes in total silence, simply letting his thoughts breathe. He once said, "The monotony and solitude of a quiet life stimulates the creative mind." It wasn't noise that gave him genius, it was silence. And he wasn't alone. From great composers like Beethoven, who heard music in the stillness, to leaders who retreated into quiet before making historic decisions, silence has always been the hidden stage where greatness rehearses itself. Einstein's silence wasn't emptiness, it was creation. And that is exactly what The Power of Silence teaches us. Silence is where truth begins. So let's uncover the first great lesson from this book: why silence is not an absence, but a living presence that transforms everything. Most people think of silence as the absence of sound, a blank space to be filled. But according to Robert Serra, silence is not a void, it is presence. Silence carries weight, depth, and meaning. It allows the soul to breathe and the heart to listen. Just as music needs pauses to make its notes beautiful, our lives need silence to give meaning to our actions. When we embrace silence, we are not running away from life, we are entering into a deeper conversation with it. True silence is not about shutting the world out, it's about tuning into the whispers of wisdom that exist beneath the noise. In a noisy room, you hear everything but understand little. In silence, you hear nothing, yet understand everything. Silence, then, is not emptiness. It is the foundation where thought becomes clear, faith becomes strong, and relationships regain depth. It is where we discover that life is not about constant movement, but about intentional stillness. Robert Serra describes monks who live in the desert. To the world, their lifestyle may seem empty. No phones, no social media, no endless chatter. Yet, in their silence, they find a fullness we can barely imagine. Their prayers, reflections, and inner dialogue with God give them more clarity and peace than most of us achieve with all our modern conveniences. For Serra, these monks are living proof that silence is not a lack of life, but the truest form of it. Their days, marked by stillness, produce wisdom that echoes louder than any speech. Think of a student preparing for exams. Surrounded by endless noise, friends chatting, TV running, phone buzzing, it's hard to absorb even one concept. But when the student steps into a library, where silence reigns, suddenly the mind sharpens. In that stillness, memory improves, understanding deepens, and confidence grows. Or picture a doctor making a life-changing decision for a patient. It is not in the chaos of a busy ward that clarity comes, but in a quiet moment of reflection. Silence is the invisible ally helping us choose wisely in moments that truly matter. Silence is not an empty room waiting to be filled, it is a sacred space already full of presence. When you step into silence, you don't lose, you gain. You gain clarity, focus, and strength that noise could never offer. Next time you're tempted to fill a quiet moment with noise, music, scrolling, or chatter, resist. Instead, pause. Sit in silence for just 5 minutes. Notice your breath. Notice your thoughts. Instead of pushing silence away, welcome it. Slowly, you'll see how silence begins to guide you. So now we know silence is not emptiness, but a living presence. But here's a deeper question. How does silence shape our inner strength in times of chaos? What happens when the world around us is loud, but we still manage to remain still within? That's exactly what we'll uncover in Lesson 2. Silence as inner strength during storms. Life is full of storms, sudden losses, conflicts at work, family disagreements, financial stress. In these moments, most of us respond with noise, endless worrying, angry words, or desperate calls to friends. But Robert Serra explains that true strength comes from choosing silence in the storm. Silence doesn't mean ignoring the problem. It means pausing long enough to anchor yourself before reacting. Think of silence as the eye of the storm, calm, centered, unshaken. While everything around you may spin out of control, silence gives you the ability to think clearly, to respond instead of react. And in those few moments of silence, decisions that once seemed impossible suddenly become manageable. Serra recalls the life of Cardinal Nguyen Van Thuan, who was imprisoned in Vietnam for 13 years, 9 of them in solitary confinement. He had every reason to despair, yet he used his silence to find strength. He prayed, reflected, and transformed his cell into a place of deep communion. Instead of breaking him, the silence gave him resilience, courage, and hope. It became his hidden fortress, proof that even in suffering, silence can give strength. Imagine a corporate professional being unfairly criticized in a meeting. The natural reaction is to snap back, defend, and escalate the conflict. But silence, even for a few moments, changes everything. It prevents words you'll later regret, gives space for the truth to surface, and often earns respect. Or think of a parent listening to a teenager's frustration. Instead of jumping in with advice, a moment of silence shows patience, giving the child room to express themselves. In both cases, silence diffuses tension and creates strength. Silence in the storm is not weakness, it is power under control. It is the ability to face chaos without being consumed by it. The calmest voice is often the strongest. Next time you feel provoked, don't react instantly. Breathe. Stay silent for 5 slow counts. This pause gives your mind the power to choose wisdom over impulse. In silence, you'll find strength you never knew you had. We've seen how silence can hold us firm in life's storms. But silence doesn't just help us endure, it also unlocks depth, meaning, and creativity. What happens when silence becomes the birthplace of great ideas, art, or faith? That's what we'll discover now in Lesson 3. Silence as the wellspring of creativity and meaning. Noise may keep us entertained, but it rarely helps us create. True creativity requires silence. Why? Because silence allows the mind to wander, to connect dots, to imagine. It is in the quiet that the subconscious begins its work. Sarah points out that silence is not passive, it is active. It clears away clutter so the seeds of inspiration can take root. When we are constantly stimulated, our brains are too busy reacting to invent anything new. But when we step back into silence, we give space for innovation, reflection, and depth. Silence makes us hear not only the world outside but the voice inside, the one guiding us toward meaning and purpose. Robert Serra describes monks who dedicate hours to silent prayer and reflection. Their silence is not laziness but profound creativity. Out of their silence flow writings, insights, and wisdom that inspire generations. Serra connects this to history. Some of the greatest works of theology, art, and philosophy were born in moments of solitude, not noise. Silence, he explains, was the hidden workshop of saints, scholars, and visionaries who shaped human history. Consider a writer facing writer's block. Surrounded by distractions, notifications, chatter, noise, ideas refuse to come. But when the writer retreats to a quiet cabin, the silence becomes fertile ground. Suddenly, inspiration flows. Or think of an engineer trying to solve a technical challenge. It is often not in the noisy office that the solution arrives, but in a quiet evening walk. Silence fuels breakthroughs, whether in science, art, or personal insight. Silence is not wasted time, it is productive in the deepest sense. It creates the space where meaning and creativity are born. Without silence, we consume endlessly. With silence, we create. Schedule silence. Just as you plan meetings or workouts, plan 20 minutes of daily quiet. No phone, no TV, no talking. Use this time to reflect, to think, or simply to be. This silence will become the most creative meeting of your day. We've uncovered silence as presence and strength, and now as the cradle of creativity. But what about relationships? Can silence improve the way we connect with others? The answer may surprise you. Let's move into Lesson 4, Silence as a Language of Love and Connection. When we think of love, we often picture words, confessions, affirmations, conversations. But Sarah reminds us that the deepest love is often silent. Silence is not coldness, it is intimacy. It is the comfort of being with someone without needing to fill every moment with speech. In silence, two people can share presence, attention, and depth beyond words. A parent holding their child doesn't need to say anything, the silence speaks louder. A couple sitting quietly together at the end of a long day may share more in silence than in hours of talk. Silence creates the space where love breathes. Sarah recalls moments of silent prayer, where believers feel profoundly close to God without saying a word. He explains that in true communion, words become unnecessary. Silence becomes the language of intimacy. Just as lovers sometimes fall into silence because words cannot capture their feelings, silence with God is the purest form of love. It is not absence but closeness. Think of a hospital room, where a friend sits quietly beside someone in pain. They don't chatter or distract, they simply stay. That silent presence becomes more powerful than any advice or words could. Or think of a teacher silently encouraging a struggling student with just a reassuring smile. In both cases, silence carries love far more deeply than speech. Love does not always need words. In silence, love is felt, not explained. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give someone is our silent, attentive presence. Next time you're with someone you care about, don't feel pressured to fill the silence. Instead, simply be present. Listen. Hold space. Let your silence say what words cannot. Silence deepens love, but it also deepens understanding. Beyond relationships, silence can actually change how we listen to others. Let's move into Lesson 5, Silence as the School of Listening. We live in a world where everyone wants to talk, but few want to listen. Real listening requires silence, both external and internal. Silence allows us to quiet our inner chatter so we can truly hear the other person. Without silence, our conversations become battles of interruptions. Sarah explains that silence in listening is not passive. It is active attention, a choice to give space to another voice. It shows humility, patience, and respect. In silence, we move beyond preparing our reply and instead receive the truth of another person. Silence transforms listening into understanding, and understanding into connection. In this way, silence is not weakness, it is the very foundation of meaningful communication. Sarah shares stories of monks who spend hours in silent listening during confession or spiritual guidance. They do not rush, interrupt, or dominate the conversation. Their silence is not absence but focus. It allows the speaker to reveal their heart without fear. This practice shows how silence can heal, simply by listening deeply, without judgment. Think of a manager in a busy office. When an employee comes in with a problem, the manager who listens silently, without interrupting, earns trust and loyalty. Or imagine a friend pouring out their struggles. Instead of cutting in with solutions, sitting in silence, nodding, and letting them finish can make them feel truly heard. In both cases, silence turns conversation into healing. Silence makes listening real. Without it, we only hear noise. With it, we hear hearts. Listening through silence is one of the greatest gifts we can give. In your next conversation, practice intentional silence. Resist the urge to prepare your response. Instead, listen fully. At the end, reflect their words back. You'll be surprised how deeply people open up when met with silence. Listening through silence changes relationships. But silence has another dimension. It doesn't just help us connect with others, it helps us connect with ourselves. Let's explore this in Lesson 6, Silence as Self-Discovery. Most of us are strangers to ourselves. We know our schedules, our goals, our obligations, but not our inner voice. Silence is the mirror that reveals who we really are. In silence, hidden fears rise, forgotten dreams return, and true desires speak. Sarah explains that many avoid silence because they are afraid of what they will find inside. But those who face silence discover not emptiness, but authenticity. Silence uncovers truth, and truth sets us free. Sarah describes hermits who live in long solitude, not to escape, but to meet themselves honestly. Their silence forces them to confront weaknesses and celebrate strengths. Far from losing themselves, they emerge more alive, more whole, and more grounded. Think of someone recovering from burnout. In silence, away from deadlines and expectations, they suddenly realize what truly matters: health, family, purpose. Or picture a young graduate confused about career choices. Sitting in silence, journaling, and reflecting may bring clarity that endless advice from others could never provide. Silence shows us who we are. It is not an escape, but a homecoming. Without silence, we remain strangers to ourselves. Schedule one silent walk this week. Leave your phone behind. Let thoughts surface naturally. Write down what you discover. That is your inner voice speaking. Silence helps us find ourselves, but it also teaches us patience. In a world addicted to instant results, silence shows us the value of waiting. Let's dive into Lesson 7, Silence and the Power of Patience. We live in an age of urgency. Fast food, instant downloads, same-day delivery. We crave speed. But silence teaches patience. It forces us to slow down, to wait, to endure. Sarah explains that silence stretches time, allowing growth that cannot be rushed. Patience born in silence prevents rash decisions. It nurtures maturity, resilience, and wisdom. Just as seeds need time underground before sprouting, our dreams need silence before blooming. Without patience, we destroy growth. With patience, we allow life to unfold. Sarah describes how monks wait in silence during prayer, trusting in God's timing. They do not demand answers but allow wisdom to unfold slowly. Their patience, born of silence, transforms them into men of peace. This spiritual discipline reveals that silence is not inactivity but trust in the process. Think of an investor. Those who panic at market noise often lose. But those who wait in silence, resisting impulse, reap long-term rewards. Or consider a parent teaching a child. Progress is slow, but silence and patience in the process build character. In both cases, silence trains patience, and patience builds success. Silence is the soil of patience. It slows us down so growth can happen. Without patience, we force life. With it, we trust life. Next time you're frustrated in waiting, at work, in traffic, in life, use the silence. Breathe. Say to yourself, this pause is building patience. Slowly, the wait becomes a teacher instead of a burden. Silence teaches patience. But silence also heals. It doesn't just strengthen the mind, it restores the soul. Let's explore this in Lesson 8, Silence as Healing for the Soul. Noise exhausts the soul. Constant updates, conversations, and alerts drain us. Silence is the medicine. It allows the heart to rest, emotions to settle, and wounds to heal. Sarah explains that silence restores balance, like sleep for the soul. In silence, past pains lose their grip, anxiety softens, and peace grows. Silence does not erase suffering but gives us space to breathe through it. Sarah recounts how monasteries welcome weary guests into silence. Visitors often arrive burned out by the world, but after days of quiet prayer and reflection, they leave renewed. Silence, he explains, is therapy, a sacred cure that no technology can replace. Think of someone grieving. Words from others may fall short, but silent presence and quiet reflection begin healing. Or picture a stressed employee taking 10 silent minutes each morning before work. Slowly, the anxiety lessens. Silence restores what noise steals. Silence is medicine. It doesn't remove wounds, but it makes healing possible. Create a healing silence ritual. Each evening, spend 10 minutes in quiet reflection. Journal one thing you're grateful for. Let silence mend your day. Silence heals the soul. But silence also sharpens decisions. How can stillness help us make better choices in life? That's what we'll uncover in Lesson 9, Silence as the Foundation of Wise Decisions. Decisions shape destiny. Yet most of our choices are rushed, made under pressure, or drowned in external voices. Sarah teaches that silence is the foundation of wise decision-making. In silence, we step back, see clearly, and weigh truth without distraction. Silence slows decision-making, ensuring our choices align with values, not impulses. It removes the fog of emotions, letting clarity rise. A decision made in silence may take longer, but it lasts longer. Sarah highlights leaders who withdrew into silence before making historic choices. He recalls Pope Benedict XVI, who would often retreat into quiet prayer before any major decision. His silence was not hesitation but discernment. It gave him clarity, strength, and alignment with deeper truth. Think of a business leader deciding whether to expand a company. Endless meetings create noise, but a weekend in silence can bring breakthrough insight. Or consider a student choosing a career path. Instead of rushing, stepping back into silence allows inner clarity to surface. Silence ensures decisions reflect wisdom, not pressure. Silence is the secret ingredient of wise decisions. Without it, choices are shallow. With it, they become strong, clear, and lasting. Before your next big decision, schedule 30 minutes of silence. No phone, no input. Ask yourself, what truly matters here? Let silence guide you toward clarity. We've seen silence build presence, strength, patience, healing, and wisdom. But silence also leads us to something even greater, the divine. In our final lessons, we'll uncover silence as the path to spiritual depth, transcendence, and ultimate freedom. Silence is not only psychological, it is spiritual. Robert Serra explains that in silence, we encounter God. Words can be prayers, but silence is communion. It is in the quiet of the heart that divine presence is most strongly felt. This silence is not empty meditation but a living dialogue beyond words. It is surrender, a place where faith becomes experience. Without silence, spirituality becomes surface level. With silence, it becomes real. Serra describes how monasteries use silence as their foundation. Monks rise early, pray in stillness, and spend much of their day without speaking. In that silence, they sense God more deeply than through constant talking. Silence becomes the channel of divine intimacy, a sacred meeting ground between the human and the eternal. Consider someone kneeling in a quiet chapel after a hard week. No words, no requests, just silence. In that stillness, peace arrives, tears may fall, and strength returns. Or think of someone walking alone in nature, hearing only the wind. In such silence, people often describe feeling closer to God than in crowded rituals. Silence is prayer without words. It is the purest way to encounter the divine. Dedicate 10 minutes this week to silent prayer or reflection. No requests. No words. Just presence. Notice how silence itself becomes a prayer. Silence reveals the divine. But silence also frees us from chains, not outer chains, but inner ones. Let's explore Lesson 11, Silence as Freedom from Noise and Slavery. Noise enslaves. The constant input of media, opinions, and pressures keeps us chained to the external world. Serra explains that silence is liberation. It frees us from being slaves to trends, judgments, and the endless chase for approval. In silence, we rediscover independence. We stop being pulled by the loudest voice and start following the truest voice, our conscience, our soul, and God's whisper. Silence makes us free, because in silence we choose, rather than being chosen for. Serra recalls hermits who lived detached from the world, not in hatred of it, but in freedom. By cutting off noise, they are no longer slaves to its control. Their lives appear simple, but their freedom is vast. They remind us that silence is not isolation, it is independence of spirit. Think of social media. Many people post just to gain approval. The likes and comments become chains. But someone who steps back in silence discovers freedom. They realize their worth is not in external noise but in inner truth. Or picture a professional pressured by workplace gossip. By remaining silent, they stay free from toxic cycles. Silence is freedom. It breaks the chains of noise and lets us live from within, not from the crowd. This week, take one break from digital noise. Log out for a few hours. Use the silence to reflect, am I living freely, or am I enslaved by noise? Silence frees us from noise, but silence does more. It leads us to transcendence, to a life beyond fear and chaos. Let's finish with Lesson 12, Silence as the Path to Ultimate Freedom and Peace. At the heart of Serra's message is this: silence is freedom, peace, and truth. When we embrace silence, we stop running from ourselves, from others, and from God. We step into harmony. Silence is not escape from life, it is an entrance into its deepest meaning. It prepares us for courage, faith, and love. It shows us that freedom is not the absence of responsibility, but the presence of peace. Serra describes saints who embraced silence until their last breath. Their peace in death came not from riches or recognition, but from a lifetime of silence that prepared their souls for eternity. Silence, he explains, is ultimate freedom. Freedom from fear, from noise, and even from death itself. Think of someone who practices daily silence. Over time, anxiety decreases, focus sharpens, and joy grows. They are no longer restless or fearful but deeply grounded. Or imagine a retiree who finds peace not in constant entertainment but in quiet reflection. Their silence becomes their strength. Silence is not just a practice, it is a way of life. It is the ultimate path to freedom, peace, and truth. Every morning, begin your day with 5 minutes of silence. Let this simple habit set the tone for peace and strength throughout the day. At the start, we asked, is silence emptiness or power? Now we know, silence is not absence, but presence. It is strength in storms, creativity in stillness, healing in wounds, wisdom in decisions, and intimacy in love. It is the key to patience, the doorway to freedom, and the path to the divine. The world teaches us to fear silence, but the power of silence shows us to embrace it. True transformation does not come in noise, it comes in stillness. If you want to discover your deepest self, your truest love, and your highest peace, begin with silence. Pick one principle each week. Practice silent prayer, patient listening, or healing pauses. Slowly, your life will be reshaped by the quiet that holds everything. Thank you for staying with us through this journey into the power of silence by Nicolas Diat and Robert Serra. If you reach this point, it means you truly want change, and silence will guide you there. Like this video and share it with a friend who needs peace. And subscribe for more. We're building the world's best library of 100+ book summaries. And remember, silence isn't weakness. It is strength, love, freedom, and peace.